Hello Corel Painter fans, this is Erik Holmen, going to walk you through the Workspace for industrial design. And getting right into it, you may notice that this is a rather simple workspace. We've got upper right hand corner here just the custom brushes, of course the colors, layers, and paper textures. And the left hand side, this is pretty much standard stuff. But get into it with the running you through my most used brushes and this palette right here. So we'll start with sketching and the cover pencil, and this is good, nice thin lines, great for just loose, or I would say tighter sketching when you need a real precise fine line. The Real 2B pencil is a fantastic drawing pencil. What's nice about this one is that you hold the pen straight up. It is tilt sensitive, so you hold the pen straight up and it gives you a nice thin line. If you tilt it down a little bit, it gives you a wider stroke, and if you tilt it basically as far down as you can, it gives you a much broader stroke, just like a natural pencil would. What's nice about this is that it can you're able to do a little bit of sketching and shading all in one, and all with one brush. You don't have to change. You don't have to be constantly changing the brush size, which is really nice. It's a bit more of a forgiving brush, which is also very nice. I've also got a thick to thin pencil if you really want to get obviously a nice thick to thin line with a very dark appearance. These are all what I use for sketching, and if you really want to start getting rough with your sketch lines, I've also got a charcoal pencil in there, which is sometimes I'll use if we're doing like an off-road vehicle or something more military, something gnarly. I can use some of these rougher pencils. Now do note that the paper textures are going to define this grain. So if you just pop on the show paper controls down here in the left hand corner, it's going to bring up your papers palette, which if I'm dealing with texture a lot, I will use this, and you can adjust the severity of the paper texture, and of course change papers if you want to. So the more or less texture you want, just adjust it there. And that's a good jump into the chalks, which I use basically for laying down textures. So this one here, the Blunt Chalk 10, I've got set to be to have a hard edge to it, and this is where I'm basically filling in areas full of texture. The large tapered chalk has got a softer edge to it, so if I want to go and actually render in a texture, I will do that with this one. So basically a hard edge and a soft edge chalk. And since we're talking about chalks and papers, we'll look down here at, of course, the standard paper textures, which are all fantastic. Some of my favorites are just the basic paper. Every once in a while I'll do the dots, fine dots if I'm doing some kind of a heavy texture. And I also like the simulated wood grain a lot. This has got a really gnarly effect if I want something to look kind of dirty. And again, I'm using, if I'm going to be dropping texture onto a product material, I'll be using either the Blunt Chalk or the large tapered chalk to fill that in. But I've got a couple of custom papers down here. I've got a couple of asphalts, I've got a fiberglass, hexagon texture, and some what they call perf or dot patterns. And if I click on the asphalt, basically I've created these very similar to some of the papers above, but if you're doing a car or a motorcycle or something like that and you want to put a little bit of texture on the ground, that a couple of these would look good. If you're working with boats a lot and you want to show off maybe the back side of a panel, we've got this fiberglass texture which will work fairly well. And then these neat hexagon patterns, which are that's nice and large. We can of course turn that scale that down over here in our palette. And I've got a large hexagon pattern and a small hexagon pattern, which, let's see, that one's the small one there. So we can get a little bit tighter with our hexagon patterns, and using these is really nice when you're doing the effects. Apply surface texture. If you want a real nice technical pattern, the hexagons are pretty slick. Clear all that out. Detail airbrush is kind of my go-to airbrush. I'll use this for sketching. It's got a nice soft look a softer look to it in comparison to the pencils, but it also is real nice actually if you make it bigger. I'll use this for shading as well. And the one next to it is the flat airbrush, and as its name would say, it's got a flat edge to it. Of course, some of the go-tos you got to have are a nice blur tool, which this is basically I got a soft, just the standard blur, which is just used for slightly blurring items. And if you really want to get into the blur, you pick up the Just Add Water. And this is a great tool if you're fixing up stuff and fixing up photos, shadows, blending large areas together. That's a tool I use quite a bit. The eraser, you got to have an eraser in there. That's a general go-to. Nothing too crazy there. And what I call the brushed metal is basically a modified oil brush that I've got set pretty wide on its grain. But this is what, if ever I'm doing a brushed aluminum, I will usually go to this guy here, and you can adjust the opacity down to put a lighter grain. But it's nice to have a brushed metal brush whenever you're ready to go. But again, that's just a slightly modified oil. One of the trickier things is the masked pattern pen that I've got here, and it's also modified. And if you go over to the left here, under custom patterns, you'll see a couple of patterns that I use quite a bit. We've got some stitching and a zipper, and that's basically what I will use. I mean, when we're talking about soft goods, backpacks or motorcycle seats and all that kind of stuff, these definitely come in handy. And let's take a look at the double French seam here, and that's a nice pattern pen for when you're doing basically any kind of soft goods. And there's a French seam top and a French seam bottom, which gives you the seam line and then a stitch above, and then the other one, the opposite one, will give you the stitch line and in the opposite direction. But as you'll know, depending on which way you start your line, depends on whether or not the stitch is on the top or the bottom. So if I go from left to right, it's on the bottom; right to left, it's on the top. And then the zipper, which is going to be a pretty easy one to make, but is again good for when you're doing soft goods. Anything that's going to require a zipper, having that pen ready to go is great. And again, I've got these. This is a modified masked pattern pen, which does not have any taper to it. If I was to start sketching here and show you where I will start off an industrial design sketch, it will be, let's say I've been fond of the Real 2B pencil lately. Ever since they introduced that, I've been getting more and more into it. And again, what I had talked about with the papers, it picks up whatever paper you're under. I had left my hexagon paper on there, so I'm picking up some of that hexagon texture. Now it looks like I'm on an Etch-a-Sketch or something. But I'm going to just switch back to the basic paper, which is usually what I'll draw with when I start sketching, thinking we want to do something cool like a motorcycle sketch or something. So we'll draw with that. And so here we go. We've got some kind of cool motorcycle detail sketch showing the seat, gas tank, and some of the rear end tail light. It's basically a detail shot. This is what I would do after maybe the main side view if you want to see what the top of the gas tank looks like. So this is all done again with the real 2B pencil right up here. And again, we've got a little bit of grain to the sketch. What's really nice about that 2B pencil is that it is quite forgiving. If I was to sketch a little bit more with a little bit tighter cover pencil, this starts off a little bit smaller, but definitely a tighter, more technical drawing. So I like the Real 2B just because I can get away with a little bit looser gestural drawing, and it doesn't end up looking sloppy at the end of the day. What I'll do next is I will take out my flat airbrush, and I'll drop a layer underneath my lines, and I will grab a color and start blocking in color underneath those sketch lines. And when that's all said and done, it'll look something like this. This is, I would say, step number 2. Do the sketch and block it in with color. After you've got it blocked in, what you'll do is then take out your detail airbrush and start shading. And as you can see here, we've got some pretty basic shading going on, just some nice soft reflections, nothing too intense. After you've shaded your surfaces up, you can take out the flat airbrush and start adding some reflections in here. And that's what you see here with some of these harder edge reflections, depending on the material of your choice. Right now I've got some of these gloss red gas tanks, so what you see in these areas here, let me zoom in on those, you'll see some harder edge reflection lines, and those would be done with the flat airbrush to give you that crisp edge to some of those reflections and really help you define the surface and give you a little bit more interest to some of your surfaces in the sketch there. When we want to get into the seat and start talking about heavier textures, that's when we're going to break out the chalks again and have your paper, whatever paper you choose, selected. It could be the hexagon pattern. That's a cool one for a seat. There's some neat technical patterns out there depending on what you want. There's some leathers. There's the fine dots. If we're doing just a general motorcycle seat, the fine dots is great for a general texture, or like a woven. At a distance, it looks great for a woven material. So if you're doing a lot of soft goods, again backpacks or whatnot, that would be a great paper to use. But again, I'll selecting my the blunt chalk 10, I will basically block in texture on that area. And yes, you can also use the effects apply surface texture if you really want that 3D rendered look. But this sketch is pretty loose, so I don't know if I'd get into that kind of detail on this level of a sketch. I would save that for a tighter rendering, which would be a little bit further down the road. This would be kind of early in the design process. So once you've got all your textures blocked in, you can see here I've got a light texture going on with the seat. And what I'm going to do is, if you want, just create another layer underneath the lines and select that, and let's say, well, I think I want something a little bit more fun. So you could again select that hexagon pattern and go in there. And I'm just blocking everything in with the blunt chalk, and then flip it around. Go for erasers, and again, if the cursor while I'm drawing looks a little funny, that's something that Camtasia is doing. So I'll just erase out what I don't need and leave the texture. And of course, you can come over here into your layer palettes, and if that's a little too brutal, you can always change the opacity of that layer with the texture on there. And just erase what you're not using. You could mask these areas off if you really knew you were going to work them, but usually on a sketch of this level, I'm cruising so fast that masking is not something I like to slow down and do unless it's going to be super critical, or if I know I'm going to be working in an area for a long time, then I'll go in and mask it, but not so much for something like this. And about at this point in the sketch, I'll like to go back and clean up some lines and add some highlights on top of those original sketch lines. So I'll make a layer on top, and this is where I'll either grab my cover pencil or the detail airbrush, whatever feels best, and something small, and go into these lines and tighten up things like you see this highlight down here, or highlights along this edge. And that's what, or even back here, you see some of these highlight details back in here and here. Those help tighten things up at the very end of the sketch. So I like to always go back and put a little bit of detail in there. But that is pretty much it. I mean, this is a fairly simple sketch with simple shading. But for industrial design, you're usually working with new shiny products that you're really trying to sell. So you're talking about brand new surfaces that are going to be pristine. And one of the things that I like to show is, although I don't have it in here, is I don't have it in my custom brushes. If you right click on your Wacom tablet, it brings up all your variants here for airbrush. So one of the ones I will also like to use from time to time is this fine spray. If you were to do if you can imagine, let's say this frame member here, what's silver, if you wanted that to be let's say a rougher casting or something with a heavier texture to it, the fine spray is a really nice way to add some texture and actually really control it. So I'll go in here and add this this highlight and this texture, and this is where you can see maybe masking would come into play. Again, I'm working kind of fast, so you can just go back and delete out where you don't want that texture. But now the pattern pens, you can see I've got a stitch along this seat that I just dropped in there to break up the upholstery. That looks pretty cool. Pattern pen, French seam double, and on this again, this is a detail for a little bit more highly rendered sketch. But in this kind of thing, if you scale it down to the right size, it works great. And it's a masked pattern pen, so it'll leave what you don't have to multiply it or anything. It'll leave what you show, and you can click up or down on the size to sort of get what looks right visually. And I'll usually do this on a separate layer, so I'm not disturbing anything. So I hope you enjoy some of these tools. And again, this is a fairly simple workspace that I think is not too intimidating if you're just getting into Painter. And it's pretty simple to use. If you're talking about product design, it's got everything you need and nothing you don't. But when I'm talking about Painter to anybody, I do stress that you go in here into the existing palettes or existing brushes, because there are a lot of them, and that you do go in here and experiment. This is not the be-all to end-all of industrial design workspaces, because there are a lot of fun tools in here. What I've narrowed it down to is the tools that I use the most, and I do stress exploring the depth of the palette and all the tools that come stock with Painter, because it's a lot of fun once you start getting into these things and seeing what all the stock brushes can do. Again, I'm Erik Holmen, and thanks for checking out my tutorial.